What I'm about to tell you might be the most important financial information you'll hear this year, and there's a reason why every major bank, every government agency, and every financial institution is desperately trying to stop you from understanding what's really happening. We're witnessing the biggest financial war in human history, and most people don't even know they're caught in the middle of it. Let me start with a question that's going to make you uncomfortable. When was the last time you actually held your money? Not a credit card, not a debit card, but actual cash that represents the money you've worked for. If you're like most Americans, it's probably been weeks, maybe months. And that's exactly how the banks want it. Because the less you understand about what money actually is, the easier it is for them to control every aspect of your financial life. But something happened in 2008 that changed everything. While millions of Americans were losing their homes, their jobs, and their life savings because of reckless banking practices, someone or some group using the name Satoshi Nakamoto released a white paper that would eventually threaten the entire foundation of a global financial system. That paper described Bitcoin, and today, 15 years later, we're watching the slow-motion collapse of a monetary system that has controlled humanity for centuries. The banks know this. The government knows this, and they're absolutely terrified. Because for the first time in history, ordinary people have access to a form of money that they can't control, can't manipulate, and can't steal through inflation or bailouts. But here's what they don't want you to understand. This isn't just about cryptocurrency. This is about the future of human freedom itself. Let me tell you about Sarah, a 34-year-old nurse from Phoenix, Arizona. In March 2023, Sarah watched her life savings disappear overnight when Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. She had $180,000 in that bank, money she'd saved for 15 years to buy her first house. The FDIC insurance only covered $250,000, so technically she should have been fine. Right? Wrong. It took 4 months for her to get her money back, and during that time, housing prices in Phoenix rose by 12%. The house she was planning to buy was no longer affordable. Sarah lost her dream of homeownership not because she made poor financial decisions, but because she trusted the banking system. Now, contrast that with Marcus, a 28-year-old software developer from Seattle. In 2019, Marcus decided to put half his savings into Bitcoin when it was trading at $8,000. His friends called him crazy. His parents begged him to put the money in a safe savings account earning 0.1% interest. But Marcus understood something that most people still don't get. The banking system isn't designed to preserve your wealth. It's designed to slowly extract it. Today, that Bitcoin investment is worth over 6 times what Marcus originally invested, even after the market crashes of 2022. But more importantly, Marcus has something that Sarah never had: complete control over his money. No bank can freeze his account. No government can seize his assets without due process. No inflation can silently steal his purchasing power. Marcus owns his wealth in a way that previous generations could never imagine. But the story gets much darker when you understand what banks are really afraid of losing. The global banking system isn't just a collection of institutions that help people save and borrow money. It's a massive wealth extraction machine that generates over $50 trillion in annual transactions, with banks taking a cut of every single one. Every time you swipe your card, every time you send a wire transfer, every time you take out a loan, you're feeding a system designed to make you poorer and make them richer. Asterisk, let me break down exactly how this works, because this is the part they definitely don't want you to understand. When you deposit $1,000 in your bank account, You think you own that money. Right. Wrong. The moment you make that deposit, that money becomes the bank's money, and you become an unsecured creditor. The bank now owns your $1,000, and you own an IOU. That bank can then lend out $900 of your money to someone else and charge them interest, while paying you virtually nothing. But it gets worse. Through a process called fractional reserve banking, that $900 loan becomes a new deposit in the system, and the receiving bank can then lend out $810 of that money, creating another loan and another deposit. This process continues until your original $1,000 deposit has created nearly $10,000 in total loans, all generating interest for the banks. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is literally how the banking system works, and it's completely legal. The banks are generating massive profits from your money while giving you almost nothing in return. The average savings account in America pays 0.45% interest annually, while the average bank is making 3 to 4% profit on your money. But here's the really insidious part. While your money is earning virtually nothing in the bank, inflation is destroying your purchasing power at a rate of 3 to 8% per year. This means that keeping your money in a traditional savings account is guaranteed to make you poorer over time. Bitcoin changes everything because it operates on a completely different model. Instead of trusting banks to manage a fractional reserve system, Bitcoin uses cryptographic proof and mathematical certainty. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and no bank, no government, no individual can create more. When you own Bitcoin, you actually own it. Not an IOU, not a promise, but mathematical proof of ownership secured by the most powerful computing network in the world. This is why Jamie Dimon, the CEO of Morgan Chase, has called Bitcoin a fraud and a scam. While simultaneously his bank has invested billions of dollars in blockchain technology and crypto infrastructure. This is why Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, continues to warn about the risks of cryptocurrency while the Fed desperately tries to create their own digital currency to compete with Bitcoin. They're not worried about protecting you from risk. They're worried about protecting their profits from competition. But the banks aren't just passively worried about Bitcoin. They're actively fighting against it. In 2021, major banks like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citibank began blocking their customers from making Bitcoin purchases with their credit cards. They claimed it was for customer protection. But think about this logically. These same banks will happily let you use your credit card to gamble in Las Vegas, buy lottery tickets, or purchase alcohol and cigarettes. But they draw the line at Bitcoin. This isn't about protecting customers. This is about protecting their business model. Asterisk, the government's role in this war is even more revealing. While politicians publicly express concern about Bitcoin's use in money laundering and tax evasion, the traditional banking system facilitates trillions of dollars in illicit transactions every year. HSBC paid a $1.9 billion fine for laundering money for Mexican drug cartels. Deutsche Bank paid $150 million for facilitating Jeffrey Epstein's financial transactions. Wells Fargo created millions of fake accounts to steal money from their customers. Yet somehow Bitcoin, which operates on a completely transparent blockchain where every transaction is permanently recorded, is the real threat to financial stability. Let me tell you about the Cyprus banking crisis of 2013, because it perfectly illustrates what banks will do when they're desperate. Now imagine if those Cypriot depositors had owned Bitcoin instead of bank deposits. The government couldn't have seized their Bitcoin without the private keys, which are under the owner's control. there would have been no way to implement a bail-in, no way to confiscate people's wealth to pay for banking mistakes. This is why Bitcoin adoption spiked dramatically in Cyprus immediately after the crisis. And it's why governments around the world are desperately trying to regulate cryptocurrency before people figure out what's really happening. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. While Western banks and governments are fighting Bitcoin, other countries are embracing it as a way to escape the US dollar's dominance of global finance. El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender in 2021, despite massive pressure from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. El Salvador's economy has grown faster than most of its neighbors. The Central African Republic followed suit in 2022, and several other nations are considering similar moves. This isn't happening because these countries love technology. It's happening because they're tired of being economically colonized by the US banking system. Every time a country wants to trade with another country, they have to use US dollars, which means going through US banks, which means paying fees to American financial institutions and being subject to American economic sanctions. Bitcoin offers these countries a way to trade directly with each other without asking permission from Washington, D.C. or Wall Street. China, despite banning Bitcoin trading for its citizens, has been quietly accumulating Bitcoin through various state-controlled entities. Russia has been using Bitcoin to circumvent Western sanctions since 2014. Iran has been mining Bitcoin to fund its economy despite international banking restrictions. These countries understand that control over money is control over people, and Bitcoin represents the first real challenge to Western financial hegemony in decades. Meanwhile, American banks are spending millions of dollars lobbying Congress to pass regulations that would effectively kill Bitcoin innovation in the United States. They're not doing this because Bitcoin is dangerous to consumers. They're doing it because Bitcoin is dangerous to their profits. Every person who holds Bitcoin instead of keeping money in a bank account is a customer they've lost forever. The numbers tell the story more clearly than any politician's speech in 2010. The total market capitalization of all cryptocurrencies was essentially zero. Today, it's over $1 trillion, and that's after a major market correction. For comparison, the entire US banking industry has a market cap of about $2.5 trillion. We're watching a completely new financial system grow from nothing to nearly half the size of the traditional banking system in just over a decade. But market cap numbers don't tell the whole story. Let's talk about adoption rates, because this is where things get really interesting. The number of Americans who own cryptocurrency has grown from essentially zero in 2010 to over 40 million people in 2023. That's faster adoption than the internet, faster than smartphones, faster than any financial technology in history. And this growth is happening despite massive opposition from banks, skepticism from traditional media, and regulatory uncertainty from the government. Young Americans are driving this adoption because they understand something that older generations are still struggling with. The current financial system is broken beyond repair. Generation Z has watched their parents lose their homes in 2008, watched inflation destroy their purchasing power, watched student loan debt trap their peers in financial slavery for decades. They've seen what trusting banks and governments with their money leads to, and they're choosing a different path. This generational shift is what really terrifies the banking industry. Every year, millions of young Americans enter the workforce with a fundamental distrust of traditional financial institutions. They're more likely to trust a mathematical algorithm than a bank CEO. More likely to store their wealth in cryptocurrency than in a savings account earning 0.1% interest. The bank's customer base is aging out, and their replacement customers are choosing competitors the banks can't control or eliminate. But the banks aren't going down without a fight. And their latest strategy is the most insidious yet. If you can't beat them, join them, then destroy them from the inside. Major banks like Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Bank of America have all launched cryptocurrency trading services for their wealthy clients. They're buying Bitcoin and Ethereum while publicly expressing skepticism about cryptos. This regulatory capture strategy is already working in some areas. Small cryptocurrency businesses are being forced to shut down or sell to larger competitors because they can't afford the compliancy. Hosts, meanwhile, large banks with armies of lawyers and compliance officers are being approved to offer cryptocurrency services. We're watching the same consolidation in the cryptocurrency industry that happened in traditional banking over the past century, but there's a fundamental difference that the banks haven't fully grasped yet. Bitcoin doesn't need their permission to exist. Unlike traditional money, which requires bank infrastructure to function, Bitcoin operates on a peer-to-peer network that no single entity controls. Even if every bank in America stopped offering Bitcoin services tomorrow, Bitcoin would continue to function perfectly. This is why countries like China have found it impossible to actually ban Bitcoin. Despite multiple attempts, you can ban Bitcoin businesses, you can ban Bitcoin exchanges, you can even ban Bitcoin mining, but you can't ban the Bitcoin network itself without shutting down the entire internet. And as long as the internet exists, people will be able to send value to each other without asking permission from banks or governments. The implications of this are staggering. For the first time in history, individuals have access to a monetary system that operates independently of government control. This doesn't just threaten banks' profits, it threatens the entire foundation of state power, which has always depended on the ability to control money creation and distribution. Think about what this means for authoritarian governments around the world. How do you maintain political control over a population that can store and transfer wealth without using your banking system? How do you collect taxes from people whose wealth is stored in an asset you can't confiscate? How do you fund your military and police forces if people can simply opt out of your monetary system? These questions keep central bankers awake at night, and they should. Because Bitcoin represents the first credible challenge to state monetary monopolies in over a century. The last time people had access to sound money that governments couldn't manipulate was during the gold standard era, which ended definitively in 1971 when President Nixon closed the gold window. Since 1971, every currency in the world has been a fiat currency, meaning its value is based entirely on government decree rather than any underlying asset. This has allowed governments to fund wars, welfare programs, and bailouts by simply printing more money, with the costs paid through inflation that destroys the purchasing power of ordinary citizens. Bitcoin changes this dynamic by providing an alternative that governments can't inflate away. If Bitcoin adoption continues to grow, governments will be forced to compete for citizens' money by offering better policies and more efficient services, rather than simply taxing and inflating their way out of fiscal irresponsibility. This is why the stakes in this war are so much higher than most people realize. We're not just talking about a new technology or a new investment asset. We're talking about a fundamental shift in the balance of power between individuals and institutions, between citizens and governments, between those who create value and those who extract it. The outcome of this war will determine whether future generations live in a world where their wealth can be confiscated at will by governments and banks, or a world where individuals have sovereign control over their own money. It will determine whether economic freedom expands or contracts, whether innovation flourishes or stagnates, Whether ordinary people have the tools they need to build wealth or remain trapped in systems designed to extract it. And here's the most important part. This war isn't being fought in Congress or in bank boardrooms. It's being fought every day by ordinary people making decisions about how to store and transfer their wealth. Every person who chooses to hold Bitcoin instead of keeping all their money in banks is casting a vote for a different kind of financial system. Every person who learns to manage their own private keys is declaring independence from financial intermediaries. The banks understand this, which is why they're spending billions of dollars on marketing campaigns designed to convince you that managing your own money is too complicated and too risky. For ordinary people, they want you to believe that you need their expertise, their insurance, their security, even though their track record of protecting customer funds is actually worse than the track record of people who manage their own Bitcoin. But you don't have to take my word for it. The numbers speak for themselves. Since Bitcoin was created in 2009, the network has never been hacked, never been shut down, and never lost a single Bitcoin due to technical failure. Meanwhile, traditional banks lose billions of dollars to fraud, hacking, and operational failures every year. The security that banks offer is largely an illusion, paid for by extracting value from their customers through fees and interest. Rig manipulation. The choice facing every American today is simple. Do you want to continue trusting a financial system that has repeatedly failed you? Or do you want to take control of your own financial future? Do you want to keep feeding a system designed to make you poorer? Or do you want to opt into a system designed to preserve and grow your wealth? This isn't about getting rich quick or riding some speculative bubble to massive profits. This is about preserving your ability to store value and transfer wealth without asking permission from institutions that profit from your dependence on them. This is about ensuring that your children and grandchildren have access to sound money that can't be debased by politicians or manipulated by bankers. The war between Bitcoin and the banking system is really a war between two completely different visions of how money should work. One system is based on trust in institutions. The other is based on mathematical certainty. One system requires intermediaries. The other eliminates them. One system benefits those who control it. The other benefits those who use it. The banks have already lost this war. They just don't know it yet. Not because Bitcoin will necessarily replace all traditional banking services, but because Bitcoin has proven that alternatives to the current system are possible. And once people understand that they have choices, they start demanding better options. This is why Bitcoin adoption will continue to grow regardless of regulatory pressure, market volatility, or media skepticism, because at its core, Bitcoin represents something that humans have always wanted: the ability to store and transfer value without relying on potentially corrupt or incompetent intermediaries. The question isn't whether Bitcoin will succeed. The question is how long it will take for enough people to understand what's at stake. And that's where you come in. Because this war isn't won by institutions or governments or even technology. It's won by individuals making informed decisions about their financial future. Every person watching this video has the power to participate in this transformation. You can continue storing your wealth in a system designed to extract value from you, or you can take control of your own money using tools that give you true ownership and sovereignty. The choice is yours, but the window for making that choice on favorable terms is closing rapidly. The banks know that once enough people understand Bitcoin, their business model becomes obsolete. That's why they're working so hard to confuse the issue, to make Bitcoin seem complicated and risky, to maintain their role as financial gatekeepers even as the technology makes that role unnecessary. But you don't have to wait for a permission. from banks or governments or traditional media to understand what's happening. The information is available, the technology works, and the choice is yours to make. The only question is whether you'll make that choice before the current system's failures become impossible to ignore. Or whether you'll wait until everyone else has already figured out what's at stake. Because make no mistake, this war will be won. The only question is which side you'll be on when it's over. Asterisk.